100 years ago, Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world, with the highest economic growth rate. The subway will be built here before Tokyo and Beijing, and Europeans will seek to emigrate to Argentina, not the United States. Foreign investment in the country was almost the same as in Canada. From this perspective, Argentina looked down on its neighbors. Brazilians, for example, had less than a quarter of the income of Argentina. But today, this country is not synonymous to an economic miracle. Rather, words like default, inflation, poverty, and drug trafficking are more suitable. Today, in 10 minutes, you will learn about the difficult path of the birthplace of Messi and Maradona, about a country with incredible natural resources but a poor population, about the largest exporter of meat, citrus fruits, cereals, and sunflower oil, which owes the IMF more than $40 billion. Hello! This is the other side of Argentina, which is not shown in the guidebooks. Let's get started. Buckle up! We are going to the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, at a time when Argentina was one of the 10 richest countries in the world after Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Ahead of France, Germany, and Italy, Argentina became rich by relying on agriculture. The fact is that the land there is incredibly fertile. At the time, Argentina fed almost the entire world with bread and meat and made good money on it. To give you an idea of how much, 6% annual GDP growth for 43 years. This is the highest rate ever recorded in the world. There was plenty of work and free land, but not enough labor. The population was only 2 million for the second largest country in Latin America. Then the government decided on its best advertising campaign. Argentina's constitutional provisions state that it is open to migrants. They are paid for their travel, allocated housing, and found work. Not emigration, but all-inclusive. As a result, in 1914, every third resident was an immigrant. The economy grew steadily and became interesting for foreign investment. The British built subways and railroads here, which accelerated the pace of exports. Americans invested in communications, transportation, and the gas industry. But there was a catch. There was a lot of money, but they hadn't learned how to run the country. At the beginning of the 20th century, independent Argentina was less than 100 years old, and the century was not an easy one. 2 world wars and the Great Depression severely shook exports and foreign investment, and these 2 components were the basis of the country's state budget. Argentina was not ready for such external challenges. This caused quite serious problems inside. The country has experienced 6 military coups, 9 defaults, and repression. It has been more than 40 years since the country said goodbye to military dictatorship, but it still cannot recover from socio-economic instability. Argentina entered the 21st century with a debt of $132 billion. It defaulted in 2001. A few months later, the unemployment rate rose by 21%. More than half of Argentines live below the poverty line. In almost 20 years, the country has not managed to overcome poverty and unemployment. In 2020, 42% of the population still lived below the poverty line. Today, the annual inflation rate in Argentina has exceeded 200%. This is a record. One of the reasons is excessive money printing by the central bank. And what does this number mean for ordinary Argentines? In fact, there is a total depreciation of the national currency, the peso. For example, the largest bill they have is 1,000 pesos. This is about $1.50. Imagine how many pesos you need if you buy an iPhone for $1,000. Basically, it's even profitable for foreigners or people who earn in non-peso currencies. The same cannot be said about the locals. After all, prices are rising steadily, and at such a rate that it simply makes no sense to plan a budget at the beginning of the month, because the prices will be completely different. The population has no confidence in the national currency. Therefore, as soon as the Argentines receive their salaries, they run to exchange them for dollars in order to somehow save their money. But it's not that simple. There are about 12 exchange rates in Argentina. There is a separate rate for different transactions. For example, Coldplay. At this rate, concert organizers have to buy dollars to pay for the performances of foreign artists. Thus, the authorities are trying to control the inflation rate. It doesn't work out very well. It is inconvenient and unprofitable for people to use the official exchange rate. That's why there is a large black market in Argentina, the presence of which only increases the inflation rate. But at least people in cities have something to change. Are you still with us? Then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There are a lot of interesting things ahead, and we turn to the next page of our guide. Around large cities, there are a lot of villages and municipalities. The standard of living there is significantly different from that in megalopolises. According to sociological data, immediately after the pandemic, the poverty rate in Buenos Aires was 16%. At the same time, 51% of residents live below the poverty line in the nearest suburb. This is the gap between the capital and the neighborhoods located a few kilometers away. People there are forced to live in slums, lack of sanitation, and terrible living conditions. Volunteers help these low-income families. They organize free kitchens for them, help them learn professions, and design educational programs for children. All the food is donated from local schools. It is brought to special points. Now, the state allocates $130 per month to such families. Each child gets $40 and a $50 food card. They have their own small sewing production, which helps them cover some of their needs. Due to limited access to quality education, most residents of these communes have never traveled outside the province. They have been living this way for generations. Due to other needs, children stop at primary school. It's a vicious circle. Some parents try to develop a love of football in their children because in Argentina, it is not only a cult, but a very real social elevator. Such problems often cause mass protests. People demand an increase in food subsidies. Such problems push people to commit crimes, among other things. Argentina produces almost no cocaine, but drug trafficking from Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia passes through its territory. Smugglers not only transport drugs to Europe through Argentina, but also sell them in the country. According to the Argentine government, the number of people who use marijuana has increased from 590,000 in 2010 to 1.5 million in 2017. The number of cocaine users has increased from 150 to 300,000 over the same years. The Argentine government is particularly concerned that the share of users among adolescents aged 12 to 17 is growing fastest. Over the past 2 years, Argentine intelligence agencies have repeatedly confiscated cocaine consignments weighing more than a ton. And in June 2017, a record-breaking 2-ton consignment was discovered. The drug was hidden in steel drums that were to be shipped to Spain and Canada. The police believe that the largest Mexican drug cartel, Sinaloa, was involved in the smuggling of this shipment. One of the most common ways to smuggle drugs in Argentina is by light aircraft. They can carry up to half a ton of cocaine, and a short 300-meter runway is enough to take off. Argentina receives 80% of illicit drugs by air. The army has been involved in the fight against drug trafficking. The military was allowed to shoot down airplanes if they were suspected of carrying cocaine. This caused criticism from human rights activists. In particular, former Defense Minister Agustin Rossi called this measure a death sentence without a trial. Part of the problem of drug use and distribution is related to poverty. Poverty is linked to inflation. Inflation with illiterate financial management. At the beginning, we said that Argentina faced external challenges that caused the decline. However, some researchers highlight another aspect. The fact is that Argentina was wealthy, but not modern. The landowners who made the country wealthy did not care much about education. Their priority was cheap labor. Because of this, populists often came to power only to be replaced by others or by a military coup. Then came dictatorship and repression. As we can see, rich natural resources are not a guarantee of economic prosperity in the long run.